Hey everybody, welcome to Love and Reload, the voice of the relocation industry. I am your host, Ben Cross, and I am so blessed and honored to have the privilege of hosting this show today. This is a very important show. We're very excited about this show. Got some phenomenal guests, so we're going to give you all just a moment to kind of trickle in here, and want to really quickly plug the book of the month for June, White Fragility. Go check it out. It's called White Fragility, Why It's So Hard for White People to Talk About Racism by Robin DiAngelo. You can buy this book. It is sold out in many places online, including Amazon. It's the #1 book in the country right now. You can buy this from Miss Janet Webster Jones at Source Booksellers in Detroit. Black-owned independent neighborhood bookstore, 313-832-1155, Source Booksellers. sourcebooksellers@gmail.com. She's awesome. Her daughter Allison also might pick up the phone, tell them I said what's up. Great people. They actually went down there and did a show with them, talked about this, kicked this off. They actually gave me a couple of books for my kids. They got science books for kids. They got all sorts of stuff. So make sure to support your local bookstores, even if you don't buy from Miss Janet Webster Jones. But go pick up White Fragility. We are hosting the book club on July 2nd. Got a couple of people signed up already. Always looking for a couple of more. And cool, check it out. Also, want to go ahead and check in with our sponsors today. Janet, let's go ahead and roll that. Thank you to our sponsor, At Ease Solutions. They provide immigration, global mobility, and global human resources support for growing and evolving organizations. Their services range from program audits to delivering workshops to designing workforce policies. We understand that managing a global workforce can be stressful, so as your partner, our goal is to put your team at ease. It is an honor to sponsor such a critical discussion in our industry. If you need help initiating similar conversations with your team, we can help. Reach out to us on our website, www.at-ease.solutions. Send a note to info@ease.solutions or reach out to Elena Anderson DeLay via LinkedIn. Thanks to the panelists and the Love and Reload show for your fearless leadership during this moment of change. Thank you, Elena. I appreciate you. You've always been a great ally to me and a great mentor in this as well. So without further ado, let's see how everybody's checking in here. Gosh, we got 51 people on Facebook right now. This might be a new Facebook record at least. Oh my goodness, this is fantastic. I'm thrilled beyond belief right now. Let's see here, we got about 33 people on the LinkedIn coming in. And let's go ahead and bring some folks out here. Miss Valencia Culbreath here. Bring out Alan. Bring out John.
Salutations.
Hey everybody, how you doing today?
Hey Ben, thanks for having us.
Thank you.
This is great. I'm so excited. I want to introduce you all properly here. So we have Valencia Culbreath, CRP, GMS, who is Director of Global Account Management and the leader of Diversity and Inclusion Programs at Graebel Companies in Aurora, Colorado. How are you, Valencia?
I'm wonderful. Thank you, Ben. How are you? Thanks for having me.
I'm so blessed to have you. Thank you so much for being here. John Fernandez, Executive Vice President, responsible for sales, global operations, and innovation for Global Mobility Solutions in Scottsdale, Arizona. How are you, John?
Hey, Ben. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I'm really happy we get to collaborate on this. So glad you're here. And we have Mr. Alan Riddick, Director of Supplier Inclusion at Drexel University in Philadelphia and board member of the Women's Business Enterprise Council of Pennsylvania, Delaware, and South New Jersey. How are you, Alan?
Doing very well, Ben. Thank you so much for having me today.
You're welcome, and thank you all. I feel so honored again, and we have a ton of people checking in right now. We got 58 people on Facebook right now. We have 46 people on LinkedIn and counting. If you're watching this right now, please go ahead and give everybody a like, a round of applause, and one of those little heart deals. Let's go ahead and spread some love here, okay? Let everybody know. Also check in with the comments as well. We're going to try to play as many of these comments as we can, but because of the nature of the show and how jam-packed with content we have today, how jam-packed it is today, we're not going to be able to get to everybody. So Janet, actually, if you don't mind, I don't know if you can maybe run some of these just to give people some shout outs and everything, give people some exposure. Just kind of play them on the bottom slowly. That'd be awesome, because I do want to honor the people that are checking in here. We're up to 56 on LinkedIn, 62 on Facebook. It's incredible. A few goals here. I want to kind of set the table. We're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion today. The panelists bring such a wealth of experience and from very different perspectives, which I think is fantastic. When we talk about this, it was important that we wanted to take a comprehensive look at this opportunity. We wanted to look at the individual, we wanted to look at the corporation, and we wanted to look at the supply chain and even our communities that we're in and we serve, right? And so a few goals, I want to just kind of lay the groundwork before we kind of get into this. First goal is to inspire our viewers in the areas of inclusive workplaces, access to opportunities for Black professionals and minorities, and creating diverse supply chains which impact communities. Our second goal is demonstrate the business case through stories and statistics. And the third is to provide actionable steps and resources to empower you to make a difference personally and professionally. So if we can check those boxes, that would be superb today. But I wanted to go around the horn and start with you, Valencia, and just kind of ask you to kind of share your story and why you felt it was important to be here today.
Sure, thank you. So my story definitely has a personal take as well as a professional take. So I would say that my reason for being here is because this platform for diversity, equity, and inclusion isn't talked about often enough. It isn't normalized in the discussions that we have. And I want to take every opportunity to be able to support the normalizations of the words we use, of the focus we have, and the efforts we are making. I identify as a Black cisgender female. And so within my identity, I have that intersect of being both Black and both female. And that is my double challenge. And I was raised to accept that. I was raised in a society and a system that was built without me in mind. And it's that system that has created barriers and obstacles for equity, for oppression. It has created issues for our marginalized and our underrepresented populations from which I come from. So I've been learning to navigate all of that. And my purpose and my passion is not only for me, what I recognize is that this is building culture and awareness for those that come behind me, you know? So.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. And thank you very much for sharing that. I really appreciate that. John, tell us a little bit why it was important for you to be here.
Well, for me, it's about sharing my story and what I've learned along the journey. And I echo a lot of what Valencia said. I grew up in the Bay Area, and shortly after high school, immediately after high school, I joined the Army. Not because I wanted to go to war, but because I wanted to get away from the environment that was fixed for my failure. And so I decided, hey, I got to get away. And what a lifesaver for me. The Army's green. So, I got to be able to dissociate myself with people from different backgrounds, different religions, different parts of the country, and in fact, some parts of the world as well. So, that was my first dive into inclusion. And so, I've had other stories that I'm going to share along the way today, but that is my main goal, is to be able to inspire folks out there and let them know that there is opportunity. And we're going to talk about how we create those opportunities, I'm sure, throughout the show.
Yeah, 100%. And actually, I just saw a really cool comment here, and man, the comments are coming in so fast and furious here. I want to find it. Janet, you got that comment from Simon Mason that went by here? I think that was really fun and apropos to what John said. My favorite quote on this topic: "Diversity is being invited to the party. Inclusion is being asked to dance." Yeah,
I love that quote too as well.
Alan, tell us a little bit about why you're here.
For me, I have a very unique background, coming from a family-owned business, and being able to work underneath of my father for many years. And like any business owner, either you want to do it or you don't. 80 hours a week were kind of too much for me. But what I was able to do for the background that I grew up in a beautiful town called Voorhees, New Jersey. It's a very diverse community. So I kind of got a chance to kind of grow up to understand what diversity really looks like when it's working right. And then I became, a person who focuses on CGPT, connecting good people together. And that's and that's what really my role and function, and what I wanted to kind of bring to the table was that I want to educate business owners and sales and help companies understand what creating a D&I initiative looks like, what creating a supplier diversity initiative looks like, or program, and understanding that there's something that we all can do, and we all can play a role in encouraging our communities to keep working together.
It's fantastic, and thank you so much for being here, Alan.
Absolutely.
Gosh, I mean, people are just jamming. I honestly, this is probably the most popular episode we've ever had. And I think we're all doing this, and we're talking about this episode just to give people a little peek behind the curtain, and you know what, to be honest, I think we were all a little nervous, and we're like, okay, how's this gonna be received, but there's so much support out here right now, and people are so ready for this conversation, and I'm just so touched and moved to be a part of it, and for all of you to trust in this process so much. And thank you so much for being here. I want to start with you, Valencia. The things you've done at Graebel are just fantastic, and they're looked at by the industry, frankly, as a best practice, I want to say. Can you start us off and talk a little bit about diversity and inclusion and equity? For those who are just starting this journey, what is the difference between diversity, inclusion, and equity?
Yeah, absolutely. Just so we're all talking about the same language or using the same language, we really think about diversity in multiple ways and at varied levels, right? You have physical diversity, you have invisible diversity, there's neural diversity, and then within each of those layers, there's multiple other layers of how people show up. So when you think about diverse groups and diversity in general, you want to have people from all sort of walks of life, all sort of lived experiences, all different races, ethnicities, the way people love, the way people choose to serve, the way people choose to religious organizations, right? So disabilities and vets. And when you have that, that's when you get to start looking at that inclusive piece of it, right? And that's where you really want to get to. You want to get to that inclusion. And that's using the diversity that you have, valuing them and respecting them and utilizing them. And that is a key word. And I want to say utilizing them, because having diversity is just not enough. It's utilizing the diversity that you have that sparks creativity and innovation. And then you have this extra piece that's equity. So I know diversity and inclusion has always been D&I for a while, and now you're starting to see people insert equity. It doesn't necessarily mean that people aren't looking at equitable practices and looking at those systems and structures, and that's how I would define the equity piece. You're looking at the systems and structures that are set up to either include or exclude people. And so at Graebel, we decided that we wanted to name it. While it's something we're looking at and obviously is a part of the role and is a part of the process, but we wanted to name it that way as well. So we also use diversity, equity, and inclusion.
So now that we know what the terms mean, and thank you for defining them for us, now how do we take that a step further, and how do we build these programs in our companies, in our organizations?
Sure, I wish it was easy as a 1, 2, 3 type tool.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, I mean, if you're just starting out and you're looking to start the process, I would say it doesn't start out with just building a program, right? A part of what diversity and inclusion is and what it offers to companies is really about changing the culture, but aligning with your values. Right. So it's about programs. When I hear that, I start to think of it in isolation, and D&I can't live in isolation. Right. It's something that is embedded in everything that you do. It is from your talent management all the way through biz development. Right. It's in your marketing. It's in your communication. It's your leadership strategies. It's really becoming the thread of who you are. And so, I would say is if you're going to start, one of my recommendations is get comfortable with being uncomfortable. I think it's going to have to start there. Start having those courageous conversations. You definitely want to be talking to your leadership. That's where you got to start first. You need to have that buy-in, and you need to have their commitment. This really, really happens from the top down, from your executive leaders to support and drive any sort of initiative or function within your group.
So you make some great distinctions there, and so blind spot for me, right? So I've asked you this question in the wrong way for the last few days that we've talked about this, about how do you build a program, and you're right, it's not a program, because a program implies that we go do this for an hour once a
Right.
week and then we don't do it anymore, and it's really about building a culture which pervades everything that we do. And so that's and let's be honest, that's a lot harder than building a program. A program looks like this, right? A culture's in here and in here and then out here, right?
Yeah.
And so you're talking about top down, and I wholeheartedly agree, right? Because so oftentimes programs fail to become cultures because there's not top down adoption, right?
That's right.
So how are you having? So we have people out here that are tuned in, they're bought in, they want to know, right? We all want to know, we want to be better, right? So how are we having these conversations, that these vulnerable, uncomfortable conversations with senior leaders who are not going to be comfortable with this, and how do we get them there?
Yeah, so I start with the idea of, and I don't want to say creating safe places. I think we too often use the idea of creating safe places to have these dialogue or to have this engagement with folks. And that's at peer level, or if you're, going up the ladder. But what I think it's more important to do is creating accountability spaces, right? Let's name what we're talking about. Let's recognize that you might feel a bit of discomfort as we talk about this, but know my heart. And if you're leading with your heart and leaning in with curiosity, know where I'm coming from and what the overall end goal is. And I think if that's in or part of the culture that you have today, those conversations are so much easier to have. And I have to say, the leadership that I have been able to engage with has been phenomenal and supportive. And sure, it was scary, right? I was that person who raised my hand and challenged a topic that we hadn't really gone down the path on before. And I think, I've joked about this before. Hopefully I'm not rocking the boat too much, don't want to lose my job over this.
Right.
However, right, because those things can get a little scary. But then I remind myself that as an equity champion, because I started this work in the educational space first, that I'm not doing my job and I'm not speaking up or speaking out if I'm not willing to risk losing my job over. And that's where I sit.
I think so many of us right now are watching this, and we're having that same conundrum, right? Where we feel this thing deep in our core that says we have to say something, we have to do something, we have to be part of the change we want to see, right? And we're afraid to step out and raise our hand and raise our voice and say, here's what I think, here's what I believe, here's what's right. And I think I appreciate you sharing that, Valencia. It was funny, and I'm going to share my story. Doing this show, I had a lot of trepidation around this. Here I am as a white cisgendered man, right? Kind of executive level, fairly well respected in my industry, who still had a lot of trepidation and concern about having this conversation. And that was the reaffirmation for me and the validation that systemic racism is a thing, because I'm feeling it, even though I can't see it and point to it. I feel it in my consciousness, and that fear right there of even saying something when, to be honest, I mean, I probably have the least to lose, right? But yet I still felt it. So I applaud the courage of everybody on this today and sharing that story with us, and thank you, Valencia. So tell me that journey though. So you raised your hand. You said, "This is what I believe. This is what I think." You stepped out in faith that it would be well received. And how has it been for you from that moment? Because I think there's people wanting to know what happens after I raise my hand.
Yeah, absolutely. You start having some real courageous conversations, and you start getting real authentic about some of the topics that you have to discuss. What I think can be tricky and scary, not only for a person maybe raising it or bringing it up or having the conversation, but also for an organization, hearing that, does this mean we have a problem? Not necessarily. Does this mean we can do better? Most likely, right? Mm-hmm. Is there opportunity to do better and be better for both your employees and for your bottom line, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, because that's why we're going to work, and that's why we want to be productive, and that's why we all want to be successful at the end of the day. So I really got to get close with a few of the leaders who have been amazing champions of the work. We've had some really amazing heart-to-heart conversations, and then just to really start putting a plan in place. And one of our first things that we did was to build out a council, a diversity, equity, and inclusion council. And so that originally started here in the US, and we are now growing to have councils globally. So we're in that process as well.
Wow. And what is the job of that council? What is their goal?
So we are, thanks. We're here to support the initiatives of diversity, equity, and inclusion. We are there to ensure that we are looking at systems and structures as well, and how things are run, and ensure that our strategies that we're putting forward and the things that we're investing in as a company are getting done. So we're helpful as an accountability system as well.
That's great. And Alan and John, I wanted to give the opportunity to comment on some of the stuff that Valencia said. She said so much, and I wanted to give you an opportunity to comment with your perspectives as well.
No, I love when Valencia said how it does start from the top. Having a strong leader who understands the future, understands the future of America, where America is going, and then you have to understand too as well as organizations that are selling or buying, is that America's customer base is a diverse customer base. So and institutions want to work with companies that have the same values and initiatives that they have. Coming from a business family and understanding a business background, it's ideal that you match and you share the same values that your customers have. And being able to communicate that, and being able to walk the walk and talk the talk, and say, hey, we're aware of your inclusion program. We also have our own, and here's what ours look like.
Yeah, I think you make a fabulous point about people want to do business with, consumers want to do business, and companies want to do business with other companies that share the same values,
Correct.
And that are allies in these things. And I just know, like, looking through my LinkedIn feed, right? Because I'm just on LinkedIn like way too much. Looking through my LinkedIn feed and looking at the companies that have come out publicly, over the last month, right? And have said, we stand with you, right? Whether it be Black Lives Matter or whether it be LGBTQ plus, right? And they're making statements, right? And I know how courageous that must be for them to do that, because when you look at it, you're like, yeah, right on. That there were some discussions behind the scenes, like, hey, we're going to do this. How do we feel about it? I don't know. How do you feel about it? F it, let's do it, and they did it, right? And I think we respect them for doing that, and I'm taking a mental inventory. I'm like, okay, so-and-so. Hey, where's so-and-so on this, right? Like, what I mean? That's just how I work.
And it goes so far. I mean, even from, and I take myself, and even as an African-American male, I have work to do myself. When I took a look at my paycheck last year, and I said, what is the percentage of my paycheck that I'm spending with people of color? And it was not at a healthy level. So that's where we have to kind of begin to check ourselves and say, you know what, am I really walking the walk? Am I really talking the talk? Am I working to spend money and spend my dollars with people that do not look like me? Am I just comfortable with only working with people that look like me? Mm-hmm. So that comes on all spectrums in both sides of the field, from a black, white, or any color at all.
So you bring up a great point, which is actually kind of a segue into the next topic that I want to talk about, right? And you bring up, are we spending our money with companies that don't look like us and have ownership, which also kind of goes literally to the equity portion of the DEI discussion, even though we don't necessarily mean it that way. But let's talk about like real equity, like people who own companies, right? Or MBEs and minority business enterprises, for those of you who don't know. But sometimes before we can get to Black-owned businesses, we have to create talent, that then in access to opportunity and create leadership opportunity and the right skill sets and the right talent. And John, I want to ask you about that. You know, how are we creating, or how should we be creating access to opportunities?
Well, first, let me start out with throwing some statistics at you, because those that know me know I love statistics. So when you look at Fortune 500 companies, take a guess of how many black CEOs are there in Fortune 500 companies. 4.
I was going to say, I probably got it on this hand somewhere. Yeah. 4.
It's 4. It's 4. So that's less than a percentage. Now, ask me how many of those Fortune 500 companies have senior leaderships, meaning, executive level, high level, C-suite type level executives. Well, it's 3.2% of the Fortune 500 companies. So another small number. So, we're not represented at the top, right? So I hear people say it starts at the top. Well, it starts with those Fortune 500 companies, and they're doing a great job of building these diversity, journeys, if you would, for their employees. But how does that resonate all the way to the top? And so, how do you monitor those results? So I just want to start with that first. So how do you build out programs? First is, opportunities to make change. First is being aware. Look in the mirror. Look at your own organization. How does it look? Does it look like the customers you're serving around the globe?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it starts with that self-awareness. The second thing is really, forgive the avoidance. You mentioned earlier, people are going to try to avoid those tough conversations. Valencia and I had a conversation the other day, and Ben, you were a part of it. I shared my fear story, and the fear of taking action or saying something because I'm the minority in the room, or fear of partnering with other people that have similar mindsets, or want to do similar goals, because we look so much alike that it might be received wrong. So at the end of the day, these are the type of fears you have to overcome as a professional to be able to do that. I've been lucky in the sense that I've worked for a Fortune 100 company, and of course they were sold 12 years ago, 13 years ago. But at the end of the day, I was part of business resources groups for African Americans, business resources groups for Latino Americans. For those that don't know me, Fernandez, I'm Afro-Latino. So at the end of the day, I was able to ride both fences, if you would. But that really helped me out quite a bit, because not only did I learn about different cultures and different people and how they perceive us, but I also learned how my misconceptions were diluting the relationship. So I was able to adjust, and I was talking earlier with Valencia as well about my mentors. Get around mentors. These people have your answer. I had a Hispanic mentor, senior leader. I had a Black senior leader. I had a Caucasian senior leader. I couldn't find an Asian one, but I was trying. And the reason I wanted to do that was because I really wanted to make sure that I got all angles of what is important to business. Let's face it, you get the right talent with the right background, your ROI is going to go up. So John, I want
to hop in real quick, because I want to touch on something that you said, that I want to go back to something you said that I think is really, really interesting, right? And I think access to opportunity is about access to networks. It's about access to capital. It's about access to skills. And so looking at the first one, access to networks, right? And you talked about a Black professionals network, Latino professionals network. We don't, to my knowledge, correct me if I'm wrong, we don't have that in the global mobility and relocation industry today. We have associations. Whether you're in the moving industry, whether you're at Worldwide ERC, whether you're at, FEM, we could name them all day long, CHIP or whatever. To my knowledge, I've seen a women in moving, group, but I've never seen something for minorities of any type. So is that something that we can do? Is that, like, if we were to imagine something, an opportunity right now, do we think that would help at all? John, Valencia.
I feel absolutely yes.
Yeah.
I feel absolutely yes. I mean, look at our industry. How many Latino professionals do you see at senior leadership positions? How many African Americans do you see at senior leadership positions? Probably not a lot.
Not a lot.
Probably matches the Fortune 500 numbers. So at the end of the day, it does start with us. And maybe today is the day that we create that organization and mentor young people to be able to have the skill sets and the knowledge, and be able to execute that skill set and knowledge to be able to change this whole environment that we're seeing today.
And can I add upon that too?
Yes, please.
One of the recommendations that I would have for businesses in the relocation space is to even if you're a majority owned firm where the CEO or owner is a white male, get involved with the Women's Business Enterprise National Council. Get involved the National Minority Supplier Development Council, you have to understand is that just because your skin is white, you can still play an active role and support diverse-owned businesses. Now, when we talk about what diversity is from a supplier side, it's equal and open procurement opportunity for all. So that's how internally we all should be kind of treating our business and making sure that before we're making a purchasing decision, did we allow everyone to participate? And sometimes participating can be in different ways. It can be looking for suppliers. So you may actually play your part and role by just reaching out to the National Minority Supplier Development Council and saying, hey, do you have any diverse vendors for me to particularly work with? Before I release this particular bid, I would like to make sure that we are being inclusive.
Yeah,
Alan, I would say to you, you're right on, man. We're seeing in our RFPs, that's always questions in RFPs today. Literally, we went through hundreds of RFPs, and the majority of them had some type of question on diversity and inclusion. What is your spend? What is your women-owned spend? What is your veteran-owned spend? So at the end of the day, you're right on, Alan. We're seeing that in our industry today.
And I'd also like to add, even on top of that, from an RFP perspective within the Relo industry, we're also seeing more companies or clients that want RMCs that have that same culture match, and they're asking about your diversity and inclusion within the company, and that and just above and beyond what you're doing with with your supplier network. So there's definitely a shift, which is super exciting. But yeah, that was the other thing we talked about.
And it's interesting because sometimes we talk about how our clients are so price driven, right? And I think this is one of those categories where we can really excel and show a qualitative difference in how we do business that will be a differentiator potentially, even if price was like the same. We talk about how we get, prices so price driven. It's like, well, yeah. Or is it? Maybe we just haven't told them a compelling story, and maybe we just haven't shown them something that they just feel like buying, even if it's not the cheapest. But I want to go back to this idea, because this is I want to harp on this just for a second here. I think that there's an opportunity, and this is something that folks have come up to me and they've talked about how they're the only person with brown skin in the room at an ERC event. All right, or there's two, or there's three, or they can point them out, and then they know each other, right? They know each other really well because they feel like they're in this together, right? How do we create more of a community around this? I mean, is there, do you think that we could go to, say, like Worldwide ERC or something and say, hey, I think it'd be really nice if we had a, maybe a special networking hour, or let me phrase this differently. What would be the things that a group like that would offer that would provide a lot of value add to minority professionals? And I'd like to ask you, Valencia, and you, John, specifically.
Yeah, I love the idea of creating larger network groups. And I think they can look very similar to some of the ERGs that folks have at corporations today. And I'll say ERG, but I'll define that for those that may not know that term, but it's employee resource group. And they can be any type of, race, ethnic, language. I mean, it could be gender, women in tech. It could be, across the board. And if that's something that we could do, because the relocation industry is, relatively small, right? We all feel like we kind of know someone everywhere. That's something that I think we could absolutely do, and to help support each other, because being in the margins and, sometimes those underrepresented group, it's hard to get out and be seen, and not only be hyper visible because of the skin you're in. So,
John, you with us by any chance? I think John might have been frozen. I think he still is frozen. It's cold in here, Arizona in the summertime. What are you gonna do? So I want to Alan, I want to talk to you, because we talked a little bit about procurement and about supplier diversity and inclusion. Broadly, how do we create more diverse supply chains? I mean, you talked about a couple of tips there, but could you give us some more ideas?
Well, that really starts first by understanding what you spend. What are the future opportunities? Making sure you understand that, you know, when it comes to your dollar, as a business, as a company, how intentional are you in regards to staying ahead of the curve, understanding what your future sourcing needs are. How much time is the purchasing team or the buying team looking into new moving companies to work with? It's important to understand that diverse suppliers just are not suppliers that may not be to a certain level. These are suppliers that are also innovative. These are suppliers that have found ways to move faster with less resources in some cases. When you're dealing with a big business, how often can you get a CEO on the phone and say, hey, listen, I understand that there's a customer service issue. How can I fix that? So that's now where we have to begin to start thinking, is that small business actually now is really able to adapt to change faster than any other business in America. So we have to kind of use that and businesses need to use that as a strength, particularly when coming to the table.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. So if people are out there watching this right now and they're about to write an RFP, because we all either sell our services to RFP through RFP processes or buy our services through RFP processes these days. What are some of the best practice types of questions and things like that they should include in their RFP package, their solicitation?
Well, it's three it's three words that I say do not use: good faith efforts. So stay away from good faith efforts, because that's a saying and a statement that says, hey, listen, we're going to try, but we may get a little tired, and
stuff happens.
Yeah,
a lot of emails that day.
Exactly. What you want to do a lot of emails.
You know what I mean? I was going to get to about a lot of emails. Anyway.
What you want to do is change your procurement focus from pricing to value. What you want to do is have your company's model from a scaled approach in regards to what criteria and what they're actually weighted as. I find that moving in that direction creates an authentic supplier inclusion, supplier diversity strategy. And being able, on the flip side, when you're marketing your business and be able to pull your spend report up to your customer and say, guess what? We don't just walk the walk, we also talk the talk. Or wait, talk the talk, but we also walk the walk.
We talk and walk, same time.
We talk and walk. So that's really the whole logic. And John, glad to have you back. We missed you for a second.
It's chilly Scottsdale. I wanted to ask you though about, gosh, now I forgot. I'm making fun of John over here. Now I forgot my question. No, but about the procurement, about reporting. You mentioned reporting out on spend. I mean, I think that's kind of where the proof is in the pudding, right? The rubber meets the road. I think this is where there might be a little bit of, I'm gonna use the word fraud. Okay, I think people are fraudulently or sometimes misrepresenting their spends. What is a best practice around reporting? Like, how can we get better with reporting? I mean, here I work for a small business. I mean, we're borderline small business, but we're still in that category, and we don't have sophisticated reporting systems and things like that. I mean, how do people keep track of this stuff? Is there a system we could be using or something like that?
There absolutely is. So diversity advocacy organizations like WeBank, NMSDC, the National Minority Supplier Development Council, they have what's called certification. So part of their responsibility is vetting diverse-owned businesses and keeping them on track and keeping aware of them and marketing them as well. But also certifying them as an institution or a company that is keeping its finances in order, has updated bylaws, has a supplier diversity program itself. So working with certified diverse suppliers. There's a couple in the region, Laura from Zonix, who had connected us together. Zonix is a certified woman-owned diverse supplier. So, you know,
my company is as well. You know, University Moving and
exactly.
Storage, We Bank certified. They come in here
And
once a year. They audit. They make sure that our CEO
yeah,
is still a woman. You know,
yes,
and that she's still working every day here. Yes, she is. Okay,
yeah.
there you go. And then we get a new certificate every year. Yeah.
Yeah, so people are, you know, it is not an easy process to go through, and it gets checked, I believe, on a yearly basis, depending on your size. So reach out to your local advocacy organizations. They receive funding to help businesses like you create programs and things like that.
That's great, Alan. I want to also I want to encourage everybody. We got some time left in the show, and I want to leave time for questions because I think audience engagement is so important. We talk about having conversations. Well, we can't just talk at people, right? I think one of the things that is giving me such great hope right now at where we are. It's been a tough year, but what gives me so much hope right now is that we were having active dialogues, and the conversations are two ways and not just people talking at each other, right? And that's really brings me a lot of hope. So I want people to comment here in the comments and actually leave questions if they have practical questions or they would love clarification. We actually have one right here from Tasha Johnson. Question for Valencia. Do you have any advice for people who want to have open dialogue with colleagues about Black allyship in the workplace?
Yeah, that's a really good and very relevant question. Right now, with everything that's been going on in the world, you have a lot of folks who want to be an ally, right? They want to do the right thing. They want to be able to support. They want to know how to do that. We have to understand in this time that there is a lot of trauma on the Black community. Okay? There is a lot of pain and things that we are also working through in the Black community today. So my advice is, and what I want to offer is permission to those to speak up, speak out, and do the education, right? And don't rely on your Black colleagues or your Black friends to educate you on something that was created not by them, right?
So what Valencia I think might be saying is, you got to do your own homework. Okay, it's like not only do the Black community have a problem right now, but it's not their job to teach you about the problem that you created. She said it much more eloquently than I did. But this is a good start too, right? Do your homework.
Oh, absolutely. It's a fantastic book. It really uncovers so much, and perhaps I'll join your book club.
That'd be awesome. That'd be fantastic. Yeah, and I'll say, I understand where Tasha's coming from too, because it's a very charged topic. I think it's been a topic that, frankly, even just saying the word Black or white just makes you cringe a little bit in your tummy, because you're like, what the heck am I about to step in right now? Seriously. And the downside had historically been greater for some people than the upside had been in even engaging in these conversations, or at least that was the feeling, I think. And I think that that value proposition might have flipped. And I think that people are understanding now the tremendous upside in having these conversations. And that also gives me a ton of hope. Did anybody else want to answer Tasha's question though too? I know she targeted Valencia with that question, but I think it's a question I'd love to hear if anybody else has thoughts on it before we go on to the next one.
I think Valencia nailed it in regards to education, understanding history. I myself went to majority Caucasian high school, and I noticed, and it wasn't until years later that I noticed that Africa was skipped. There wasn't, the education on Black history stopped at Martin Luther King. And so how much do we really know about each other's culture and about each other's history? So it takes work. It takes time. It takes education. It takes people teaching their children about Black history. It starts there.
Love that. Fantastic. Let's see what other questions we have here coming up. All right. What else we got here? Oh, here's one. I got one here. It looks like this one's from Victoria. Hey, Victoria. She says, do companies who include minority suppliers take the time to help them grow, or are they just checking off the boxes on RFPs? Oftentimes, minority suppliers may bid higher because their purchasing power costs more.
That's a great question.
Alan?
Great question. Yeah.
I,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say we take it very seriously. We do vet our minority suppliers. We make sure we have all the reporting in place. But more importantly, we build those relationships because they have insights and we have opportunity. And so together, we've done some great work together, whether it be helping local communities or whatever the case may be. But it's time to take it to the next level, right? It's time to really have those tough conversations and leverage those relationships to have those tough conversations. So welcome some additional feedback there.
Yeah, I would totally agree. It's, now there are some institutions that have a focus on checking off the box. I'm not going to say that does not exist. I've gone to many conferences and come across inclusion professionals who are just there, and their procurement is just there to meet criteria. Where it starts from and is an age-old topic of scale and capacity, and whether big business and whether large organizations can help diverse and minority suppliers grow to scale and capacity. So what does that mean? That means changing your procurement model from a pricing to a value. It's also working in on the other side of things is looking at where your critical spend is at and communicating the commodities in which diverse businesses typically are not getting to. Educating organizations that help organizations work to scale and capacity, help them achieve the actual working capital that they need, help them to achieve the equipment that they need. In many cases, connecting people together, which is, connecting a smaller business with a larger business and having them partner together to allow that diverse business to be able to compete pricing wise. So it's a lot of work. It's a lot of relationship building. It's a lot of it's a lot of communication and understanding what core areas have traditionally been only with white suppliers and letting the business community know that these are areas of opportunities too. How do we get you here where you can compete and bid?
You said something very interesting with the checklist thing, because I really believe that you can't do diversity and inclusion off a checklist. It never ends. It's going to be a never-ending process, a never-ending effort, a never-ending endeavor. That ongoing education, that ongoing awareness, that ongoing reaction is going to get us somewhere. And I hope that my kids and their kids have that opportunity and reap that benefit.
Mm-hmm.
Great stuff. Here's a comment from Tom. Tom says, there is an irony to the fact that D&I is a major differentiation for organizational HR mobility policy and metrics, yet for years, whenever I've attended larger industry conferences, I'm always surprised at the overwhelmingly huge proportion of white attendees. Yeah, mm-hmm. I think we all are, right? It's obvious. And I think it's I talked about this on the show last week, and I want to hear your thoughts on it as well. As a white person, I'm used to being in white spaces all the time, right? When I'm in black spaces, probably once a year, twice a year, I'm hyper aware of that. I think I'm still far more comfortable than a lot of people would be in that situation, but I'm hyper aware of that. To put the shoe on the other foot and then make that, and that's a daily thing, I think is just a eye-opening mental exercise for all of us. But I would like to hear your thoughts on how do we, and let's be honest, right? How do you choose who gets to go to ERC, right? There's a you know how this works, right? There's a few people in the org that get to go to the conference, and some people go every year, and some people are chosen, and you maybe did something special and you get chosen, whatever. But how do we get more folks in the room? Because in that room is where a lot of the opportunities are.
Yeah, I'd like to comment on that, Ben. And I think it really is going to start at the root of how you're diversifying your organization. If you don't have a lot of options or opportunity to send or to develop, then all of that is for naught. Right. So it really starts at the root of the organization to look at what they have and what their makeup is today and to make intentional and meaningful goals to diversify at every level.
So there's the hiring, right, which is the diversity part. Then there's the skilling and mentoring, which is kind of the inclusion part, right? And then to get to the retention, that's a great point. You bring up an excellent point. We don't talk about that. We say, well, we hired X amount of folks of this type or this type, but then we don't think about, hey, they're walking out the door 8 months later or a year and a half later because they didn't feel at home in the environment that we created. And we got to think about that, right? And then if the turnover is there, then they're not going to be the tenured employee that makes it up the ranks, that then goes to the ERC and then becomes the policy person. Anyway, preaching to the choir. Thoughts, John, Alan, on this observation? I'm sure you're familiar with this observation.
I just wanted, it made me think, Valencia, there for a second, because, it's retention. I worked for, in one of my previous jobs, I worked for a company before where on the first day, another employee of senior leadership asked, who am I? What am I doing there? How did I get there? And what are your credentials? And it was in an open environment. But it's from a retention of that, and how do you retain talent, and how do you keep a working force, your human resources department aware of certain things like that. But when you said retention, it brought back an old encounter I had many years ago.
And you mentioned retention.
Well, unfortunately, that encounter is too common for all of us, and that's the problem, right? That encounter is not an encounter that's strange to me. It doesn't even surprise me at all. I'm not sure if it surprises you, Ben, or anyone else on the call, but that happens, and that's frequently all what we experience out there from a minority perspective.
I mean, it's kind of the benefit of the doubt, right? Not getting the benefit of the doubt kind of thing, right? Assuming positive intent and not positive intent. Nicole Barilli says, it seems like organizations are willing to invest in DEI training or the creation of DEI programs for existing employees, but they are not looking at reaching diverse populations in terms of hiring. Any thoughts, comments on that? This is the get them in the door question, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So when you talk about equity, that's where you start with that access and opportunity. And if you're looking to get folks in the door, you've got to look at how you're recruiting, where you're recruiting, and if you're using an outside source, do they have direction and understand what your goals are? Don't send me everyone from one side of the city, right? I mean, and if you're looking at your reflection of where you are in the world, are you representing your current population? Are you overrepresented or underrepresented, in certain areas? So that's something you have to look at, and that goes right into how you're recruiting and hiring. And you have to intentionally make those plans and outlines and accept no less.
And I got to throw a shout out here to the HBCUs. As an HBCU grad, recruit from HBCUs. You got some great talent out there. So intelligent folks out there that are going to work hard for you. Don't forget about your HBCUs out there.
And for the white folks, that's historically black colleges and universities.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. I don't know if people don't know that. Maybe people do know that. Maybe I'm stereotyping people.
Ben has to translate.
Go a little bit further. They were historically black colleges and universities. If you look at them today, they are quite diverse, and some have changed over quite a bit. So, but yeah. Mm-hmm.
Excellent point. And then Nicole, yes, Valencia, so much work needs to be done in the industry and hiring and retaining diverse talent. I agree. Actually, that brings me to a good point. John, I want to ask you, about your experience, your experiences maybe with mentorship, right? You had shared with me some different stories and everything about mentorship, and and that kind of goes to the retaining and then preparing people for the next role and then the next role. What are some of the success stories maybe you've had, or could you share with us in your career in terms of that?
I've definitely been blessed to be around people that really have taken me under their wing. I mentioned I joined the Army right after high school. My first sergeant, first thing he did when I got to my first duty station, it says, "Hey, you guess what? You're going to take a college class. Guess what? You're going to go ahead and open a Fidelity investment account." I'm 18 years old. What do I know about all this stuff, right? But those seeds resonate today. What he taught me about finances, because I think that's another gap, right? Is financial awareness and intelligence and education and things of that nature. But I learned quickly about finances from him. I had a Kappa's a black fraternity, if you would, who was my commander. He took me under his wing and made sure that I went to college classes. Fast forward after the military, in my relocation career, I've been blessed to have some great leaders. Some of them are your competitors on this call, and some of them are not. But at the end of the day, I've had great leaders. It's such a small industry, and I'm throwing out names. John O'Connell, if you're out there, you're listening. You were a great mentor. You taught me so much. Michael Neimer, who's retired, great mentor out of Atlanta.
I know Michael.
Taught
Yeah,
me
shout
so
him out.
much. Yeah, shout him out. Jimmy Gonzalez, the leader of the Business Resources Group for Prudential, was a mentor. Danielle Sutton, who's now the a senior executive at PayPal, was a great mentor. These people really took me under their wings and guided me. At one point I didn't know what a P&L was. I mean, they actually guided me and showed me and gave me the resources and frankly footed the bill for Six Sigma training and a lot of different things that allowed me to progress my career, even taking master's courses. So, I mean, that kind of mentorship goes a long way. And now I'm spreading the love with doing the same thing for people in my circles or people that have reached out to me. But I would tell you that the main thing that I would focus on in my story is take the lead. Be your own, diversity inclusion specialist, if you would. Go out there and engage those people. I won't say force them, but let them know that what your interests are. You'd be amazed how many people want to help you if you just ask. So that would be my advice, and that's a little bit of my story. And I'm so happy to be working for a company that I work for now. My president and my board, he grew up in the Congo, so he knows a little bit about diversity. Did missionary work, so he really embraces diversity in his teams. If you look at our organization, it's pretty diverse. But to someone's point earlier, it starts at the top down. And I think our leadership here in the relocation industry really need to take an eye-opening look at themselves, their organizations. And today is the day to take action. If we can get a commitment from everyone watching that you're going to take one action to make something different, imagine what that can do. Mm. So that's my soapbox there.
Thank you for sharing that, John. That's fantastic. One thing you said in there was be your own diversity, equity, and inclusion manager. Your own personal. I think somebody once said to me, you got to be the CEO of Ben Cross Enterprises. But you also have to be your own DEI manager as well. Holding yourself accountable and make that a personal strategy and build a culture within yourself, right? And companies are not these monolithic organizations. Companies are groups of people working towards common economic goals together, okay? Mm-hmm. And so if we can start to change people's hearts and minds about these things and give them the information and the tools to hold themselves accountable, then we can start to change companies as well. And that's what really also, gives me a lot of hope and why I'm so happy to be doing this on LinkedIn live with so much engagement right now. This might be the most popular episode we've ever done, and just I'm so blessed and fortunate. Thank you so much. I got a couple more comments though. I'm not cutting it short. The party's not over yet, everybody. So just hang in there. Hosea Botley says, as a certified MBE and SDVOSB, that's a minority business enterprise and service disabled veteran-owned small business company, I find it very difficult to get the attention of corporate companies. They all request you put your company in their portal, and that's where it ends. And any advice on how to move beyond the portal? You get stuck in that portal. I'll tell you what. That's where RFPs go to die. The portal. Mm-hmm. How do I get out of the portal, Alan? I want out of the portal.
Totally understand.
You told people to go in the portal before, haven't you, Alan? You said, "Hey, here you go. Check out our portal right there."
Yeah, I start with the portal, but what I follow up with a QFR.
Okay.
Do you know what that is? A quarterly friend review.
No,
So basically, I allow, and we all should allow, a touch point. Hosea, you should be going back to that supplier and saying, "I'm finished your portal. Can I connect with you once on a quarterly basis to get it to give you an update on what's new with my organization and also learn what's new with your organization?" Letting your potential customer know that you're there to add value, and you've done research on them, and it's also connecting in a different capacity. If a company you're going after for, and many companies have United Way programs, maybe you should connect your company within United Way to have a different type of connection point. There's a lot of diverse businesses out there. It's a very competitive. It's sometimes it can be hard to be seen as different. So you have to find new and creative ways to differentiate yourself as a diverse supplier and as a business owner. Now, one of the things that what it really also comes down to is relationships. How are you building fruitful relationships? How are you connecting to maybe just not the actual supplier, but are you getting introduced by the regional president of NMSDC or by the regional president of WeBank? So it is about building meaningful relationships, and that's the hard part about after you finish getting done with the portal.
The post portal, the portal, the work has just begun. Jose is in portal purgatory over there, but that's all right, Jose. We're going to break you out of that.
He's probably filling out a portal as we speak.
He's probably on a portal, right? He's probably filling out your portal right now. He's probably on Drexel University's portal.
He's updating his capability statement right now.
Oh my gosh! Yep, quarterly friend review. People are digging the quarterly friend review. People are loving the advice as well here. People from Brazil. I mean, we've got people from all over the world right now. This is fantastic. I'm just trying to choose the next question. We got a couple here. Here's a comment. It looks like with a question. Laura Young, companies making a statement is easy and feels like more of a CYA. Do you believe most companies have what it takes to make this a real part of their mission and vision? I look forward to seeing which ones truly make it right. Go.
So I'm going to make an assumption that Laura is talking about perhaps some of the most recent statements that have come out, right, after George Floyd, and either standing with Black Lives Matter or they're coming out with commitment to, no hate, or we stand with our, equity and inclusion or building D&I, right? There's all these things that I've seen and have been flooded with, and I get what she's wanting. She wants receipts, right? She wants to see the work. And I was talking to the council about this because there is a lot, and where does it go from there? I don't know that every company has had to have decades of work to be able to say and stand up today that I stand with you, that I see you and I value you. And I can appreciate that. And then I think with that statement, I don't know how you say that and do nothing afterwards, right? Because your entire organization knows that this is your statement. So my hope and what I believe is that these companies are going to produce receipts going forward.
I love the fact that you're assuming positive intent and that you're giving them the benefit of the doubt and respecting the courage that it takes to make a public statement. Yes, we're TBD on what happens in the future, but I think the first step is declaring it, and then now it's publicly out there, and people will. I mean, the internet will hold you accountable.
Yes, they will.
I mean, but your point about we're getting a lot of memes, but it's time for some receipts. And this can't just be a meme movement. We have to get deeper and have conversations, and that's one of the reasons I thought this format was fantastic, because we can dig below, beneath the surface and the memes, the one-liners, and actually get into some of the deeper stuff that's going on. We're going to continue having these conversations as well. Alan, as a person that's kind of supplier facing, that deals with a lot of companies out there. Do you think that this is CYA? Do you think that there's real change afoot? Do you think that this is temporary, or do you think this is long lasting?
I think this is long lasting. Particularly, it's the customer base. So in business, if your business want to align with their customers and what their customers look like, and so that means that they want their organization to look like what their customers are. America is a diverse nation. It is what it is. They want to make sure that they're spending how their customer base looks like as well. So I think it's where we're headed towards is a stronger alignment as a country. So I don't think it's a CYA. I think it's going to take time. I think it requires the investment and the pursuit of small business who's really taken even such a hard hit now during COVID-19. But I think it takes the investment of small business. And I think it, from a sales side of things, as small business owners, it's how strongly are you aligning to the values of a Comcast, to the values of a Drexel University? Are you even taking time once you go on their website? Are you checking that portion of the website to understand what's important to them?
Fantastic. We got a couple more comments here. Lindsay Childers says, do you think having more ESOP companies could create more opportunity for diversity overall in the industry? Just throwing that out there. Sure. Alan?
ESOP, can you help me with that term?
Absolutely not. I have no idea. I was hoping you knew.
ESOP.
I'm out of acronyms, guys. I got nothing.
I mean, I can GTA, or I said GTA. I can GTS that.
You can GT it, yeah. Yeah. So we're gonna come back to that one, Lindsay, because that was a very complex, nuanced question. Andrew Bruzy says, wonderful thoughts. One of our clients requires resumes to be submitted without addresses or names to address implicit bias in hiring. Implicit bias, we haven't even really talked about that, but I mean, that's a big part of the hiring process as well. Any thoughts on implicit bias in the hiring or otherwise?
Yeah, I agree with that process. And there are so many studies that will show you that knowing if an applicant is either male or female or even has an ethnic sounding name, it's those unconscious bias that can creep up if you're not aware of them and you haven't done any of the work. And now you've eliminated or you've excluded a pool of applicants. And then on the flip side, we're wondering why there's a war for talent, right? So I think there's something to be said about getting rid of names, addresses. I mean, and sometimes even college universities, when you have that likeness and, oh, I went there, right? Now, all of a sudden, I like this application more, right? So there's a lot that needs to, I would say, be removed. But yeah, I love that. Thank you, Andrew.
Yeah, and here's the other thing, too. We have to understand bias. We all have biases. Mm-hmm. None of us are without bias. And the first step is to understand the bias, to know what your biases are, and to counterbalance that, to become more informed about it and be aware of it, and then counterbalance that with other initiatives such as the one Andrew might be describing here, because you won't be able to get out of your own way. It is human nature to be biased, but we also have to understand that, and we also have to understand why that's a problem, and how that limits us too. Because I went through a period, I'm just going to share, I went through a period where I was hiring people, and I was hiring people that were like me. I thought, what I need more people like me, and I looked around one day and I'm like, gosh, we're really good at one thing. We're not really good at anything else. I need a lot more checks and balances around here, because we're just going in one. I need more skill sets around here, And so that was my one of my awakenings. We've got some clarification on ESOP, employee stock ownership programs.
Okay.
So to Lindsay's question before, if I can find it, it was, do we think that Basically, do we think that having more employee stock, here it is. Do you think having more employee stock ownership program companies could create more opportunity for diversity overall in the industry? It's an interesting question.
So when and I'll take a stab at that. When we're talking about employee stock ownership plan, that means giving your employees the actual right to hold value and equity within your firm. And what is difficult about that is that in large organizations, majority of the people hired are not people of color. So I don't necessarily see how that would create to more opportunity for diversity in a specific industry. I would say though is that companies work and go off of what and how their shareholders' values and belief. So by communicating what's important to you as a stockholder, and putting the right people in charge from a CEO standpoint, and putting the right leadership in charge, really is where it starts. We talked about earlier today about overall leadership and that it comes from the top down. At Drexel University, our president, my name is right with his name in communication, saying that we are working towards our community. In the recent riots within the city of Philadelphia, we're now doing more with our community. Is that we're creating a center for Black culture. We're creating resources where Black faculty and staff can now have an opportunity to kind of talk about their experiences at Drexel University. So I'd say that in addition to employee stock ownership plans, it's having a strong leadership that is putting the right people in place, is creating a chief diversity officer role within your organization to say that this, we have an actual program, and someone's in charge of this program to help to hold the university as accountable.
Yeah. Any other answers to that question, or anybody else want to talk about it? I have a thought on this actually, Lindsay, and I think it's really cool that your company is doing this, but I don't necessarily know that it's going to affect change, and because you have to look at the board. I mean, what's the composition of your board, right? So if I'm a white person or a Black person or a disabled person or any kind of a person, I hold a share of Google stock. Am I going to be able to affect change in Google? No, because I'm not part of the senior leadership team. So I think having diversity and inclusion at the senior leadership level is kind of where it needs to start. I think sometimes ESOP is a really neat idea, but I don't necessarily know that it changes the way you govern the company. Just my opinion. And I'm sure your company's great, Lindsay. Erica says, "Hey, Erica, it's about time you checked in. Erica, where you been?" I want to go around the horn real quick. We went a little over, but I don't really care. So I want to go around the horn, and I just want to give everybody kind of a moment for a final word. This has been fantastic. Valencia, I'd like to start with you. Final word.
Thank you. I'd like to say for folks that are either on this journey, whether they're new or deep in, just be mindful of seeking out multiple perspectives, right? When you're starting to make changes and bringing up ideas. I also want to offer that it's okay not to know everything, but commit to educating yourself to learn.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. That's right. Wow. All right. I thought we made it the whole way before I started getting a little misty over here. John, I'd like to go to you next, sir.
Yeah, just remember you're in charge of your own destiny. Create your own opportunities. No one's going to do it for you. It's going to take help. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Again, nothing is done in a silo, done right. So that being said, I will also say if you're interested in creating a group on this very topic for the relocation industry, connect with me on LinkedIn. Valencia and I just had some conversations the other day, and I've been talking to some, senior leaders within the organization who are very much interested. So if you're interested in being part of a group, send us a LinkedIn or send Ben a quick note. I'm sure he would love to help us put that together.
100%. Yeah, I look forward to seeing that next time we convene at ERC. Actually, I actually like to commit to making that's going to happen. I don't care if there's 3 people in the room. We're going to make it happen. It starts with just whatever. We're just going to start it. As far as I'm concerned, here it is. Here we go. This first meeting. Alan, I'd like to give you the opportunity. Final word.
And you know what? I like what you said about opportunity. In educating yourself, that's an opportunity. So I'll say these three letters that you hear often, but never connect like this. The word CEO. I live by that philosophy, which is challenge every opportunity. And so when I don't know something, that's an opportunity for me to learn about it, and for an opportunity later for me to talk about it. So again, I'll leave those words with you. Challenge every opportunity. Start with yourself first, and then start with your business second. And businesses are in this to make money. People are on this platform now talking and putting comments, but we all have families to feed. We all want to take care of ourselves. But it's that family and it's that environment, is that as a country we are all one family. And we've seen how we've kind of worked together as a country through COVID-19. Imagine how we can work together when there isn't a pandemic going on. So I'll just leave you guys on that.
Love it. Thank you, Alan. I just want to plug the book for the book club here, White Fragility, again, why it's so hard for white people to talk about racism. I think it's super important, to Valencia's point, that we educate ourselves. We have to listen. I think there's a lot of trauma on the white side of things too, and I think there's a lot of guilt, and there's a lot of folks who don't want to have this conversation because it makes them feel guilty about the situation and about what part they may have played in it, when the whole time they thought they weren't doing anything wrong. And the truth is, they just weren't doing anything. And there's a difference. And so I want to challenge us all to not just not do anything wrong, but I want to challenge us all to do the right thing. And so I want to leave you with that. Read the book, check it out. Go ahead and buy it from Miss Janet Webster Jones. Tell her I said what's up. She's a wonderful, wonderful woman. Her and her daughter Allison run Source Booksellers out in Detroit. Phone number's at the bottom. I'm going to just plug it real quick. Again, 313-832-1155, sourcebooksellers@gmail.com. Check it out, order it. And I also want to go ahead and thank our sponsor again. Shout out to my friend Elena. I want to go ahead and plug her company here. At Ease Solution provides immigration, global mobility, and global human resources support for growing and evolving organizations. Our services range from program audits to delivering workshops to designing workforce policies. We understand that managing a global workforce can be stressful, so as your partner, our goal is to put you and your team at ease. It's an honor to sponsor such a critical discussion in our industry. If you need help initiating similar conversations with your team, we can help. Reach out to us on our website, www.at-ease.solutions. Send a note to info@ease.solutions, or reach out to Elena Anderson DeLay via LinkedIn. Thanks to the panelists and the Love and Relo Show for your fearless leadership during this moment of change. Thank you, Elena. I appreciate you very much. I appreciate all of our guests, Valencia, John, Alan. Thank you so much for being here. It's been truly an honor.
Thank you.
For having us.
And thanks to all the people who chimed in. We had hundreds of people here. This might have been I think this was more popular than Bill Graebel's episode, Valencia. So you can rub that in this. Anyway, no, but you guys have been wonderful. Thank you so much. I hope you all share this. It's going to be available on YouTube. It's on Facebook and everything. Thank you again, and just appreciate you all.